Well, well, look who's back. If it isn't Blaziken. Blaziken was at the top of the game in 2004, and it's honestly not bad in 2005 either. It certainly has a lot more competition in 2005, which led to a more streamlined version of the deck, but it does pick up some new tools itself. We are still running the Fire Starter Blaziken alongside Blaziken EX. They play very well off of each other. And we still have Rayquaza EX as an excellent backup attacker, but we've dropped the Delcatty line entirely. We've dropped the Team Aqua's Manectric. We've even dropped the 1-1 Bellossom tech. Because if Blaziken wants to compete in 2005, it has to be as efficient as possible, meaning you can't have multiple setup Pokemon when you can just replace all of those lines with a 2-1-2 line of Pidgeot. Though Firestarter Blaziken does miss that synergy with Delcatty, TV Reporter makes it easy to get Fire Energy into the discard in the early game, and in the late game you are definitely going to have Fire Energy in the discard anyway. Where the 2004 version of this deck was all about quick, efficient setup, powering up Blaziken EX as quickly as possible and blitzing your opponent, the 2005 version is okay with having a slow start, especially if you know that you're up against ATM Rock and you can't risk just using rare candies to get what you need for a setup. Even if you get behind in the early game, Blaziken is an amazing comeback Pokemon. It can be much scarier in the late game once you start dropping your alternate attackers in Rayquaza EX, which can spiral growth all of your lost energy back into play onto itself and deal a ton of damage, or a surprise Moltres EX, which enters play, gives you a free switch, and is able to hit your opponent for 60 damage plus confusion out of nowhere. The build is still super straightforward. You want to start with Dunsparce, use Strike and Run to get some basic Pokemon onto your bench, use Celio's Network to search out those evolution cards, or just your numerous different draw supporters to draw into those cards. Anything that you're not drawing into, Pidgeot can go grab. Then once your Blazikens are down, it's just powering up for big attacks. When your Blaziken EX begins to get worn down, that is when you will use a Warp Point or a switch to get it out of there, or as I mentioned earlier, slap down a Moltres and get a free switch. Here's a sample deck list. One of the only pieces we haven't talked about yet is that one copy of Jirachi in there to help as evolution support. If you got a bunch of Torchics down, you want to be able to evolve more than one of them on that turn, and sometimes you just can't draw into them. Maybe you've already searched out the Combustions with a Pidgeot. That extra Jirachi in there is going to help you evolve up into them quicker, which will be key against Rock Lock decks, or really any Lock archetype that Blaziken does not like to mess around with. We've also got those 3 copies of High Pressure System to help you retreat a little easier, but in most cases it's going to be more of a counter stadium, trying to get things like Battle Frontier off the field so that Pidgeot can do what it wants to do. No basic lightning in here. Rayquaza's Dragon Burst can be used just fine with a multi-energy. Blaziken EX really excels the most when it's up against other 2-prize decks, which is a problem for 2005 because those 2-prize decks were marginally more powerful than single prizers, which is why single prize decks were so popular. I've already mentioned that Blaziken EX does not like Rock Lock decks, which were also very popular, and they weren't the only type of Lock deck. I've already gone over at least 3 other deck techs for Lock in this playlist. Blaziken EX is by no means a bad deck in 2005. It even has a top 16 placing at the World Championships. But the final nails to the Blaziken coffin were starting to come together at the end of 2005 when more and more people were experimenting with Blastoise EX and were finding out just how explosive it could be when paired with any number of other big EXs. I'll be keeping this one short since it's not a new archetype being added, it's just a tweaking of a previous archetype to try to fit a new meta. If you do have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. I'll see you guys at the next one.